Okay, this is a tutorial to show you how to use Premiere Pro to sequence your animation frames that you scan. Okay, so first open Adobe Premiere Pro. I have it here. Click New Project and change the project name. I'm going to do Scanning Test 1. And put it in the project location, like folder location that you want. I wouldn't do anything in here for right now, and click Create. So if you haven't used Premiere before, this is your sort of editing home base. On the left here is your media browser where your files are. Down here is your timeline, and here is your video preview. So the first thing you want to do is import the JPEG frames that you want to work with. So we're going to go to File, Import. You can also do Command-I or Control-I. I'm going to find my scans. Here I have them here. You're going to click the first image. I will hold down Shift and click the last image. You can also just go like this. You just want to highlight all the frames that you want to bring in and click Import, and they will show up here in my media browser. Okay, now what we want to do is create a new sequence. So how Premiere works is that there's no default timeline created for a new project. You have to make a new sequence, which is essentially a timeline for one part of your project. The reason they do it that way is that so you can easily build separate sequences, and you're not always working on like a master timeline in case your project is really complicated. You can have multiple timelines and then put them together at the end. So let's make a new sequence for this project. So you're going to go to File again, New Sequence. And you have to set up your timeline in a way that is appropriate for your project, for the frame rate that you're working with. So here there's presets. There's lots of different kinds of presets. And these are not going to work for sequencing animation at 12 frames per second because they're set for video rather than animation. So what we're going to do is select one of them and then customize them into a custom preset. So I'm just going to pick HDV 108024 for right now, and then go to Settings to customize it. So again, you're making your custom timeline / sequence settings for your animation. First, start at the top. We're going to Editing Mode, scroll to the top, and do Custom. It has to be custom. Time base is your frame rate, so you're going to do 12 frames per second. The frame size is very important. You need it to match your 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, so it's not widescreen. If you do it widescreen, your paper will sit in the middle with black bars on the side, so it needs to match your paper size. And for class, we're scanning at 200 dpi, and that will result in a certain pixel size that will create a video frame that matches up exactly with the size of your paper. So for our 200 dpi scans, you're going to set it at 2231 pixels wide. So that's 2231 horizontal. And vertical, you're going to set it at 1695. So 2231 and 1695. You're going to change your pixel aspect ratio to square. And the rest of these can stay the way they are. I recommend clicking this button, Save Preset. And you can make this one 200 dpi frame scans. Click OK. And then you'll have a new custom sequence setting here. That's always the same. And when you come back to sequence more, you can just set this up as your settings every time you make a new sequence. Click OK. And then it will show up in the bin here. You have your frames and you have your sequence. And the sequence will automatically show up on the bottom as your new timeline. And your video preview is the same aspect ratio as your paper. So I'm going to take a second and do a little bit of organizing in my media browser. To select all of these, right click it, and do new bin from selection. If you're working on a school computer, you can also do command click. New bin from selection, and I'm going to say scan test 1. Then when you collapse this, you have your frames, scan test 1, and your sequence. Okay, so I'm going to clean this out again. Hold all these down and drag them to the timeline. If you just do this though, let me play this. Click the space bar to play back the preview. Each frame will be super long. I think it's like automatically 5 seconds or something, and you need it to be 1/12 of a second. So let me take all these off of my timeline, just select them all and delete them. So what I need to do is go back to my frames, hold like the first one and shift and click the last one to select them all, right click, and you need to change your speed/duration of every frame. So this is a time code that is first, I think it's like hours, minutes, seconds, and then frames. So right now each clip is automatically set to be 4 seconds long and 29 frames. So you're going to bring your duration all the way down by clicking and dragging to the left. So click this blue time and drag all the way to the left, and now your duration of each frame is 1 frame. And click OK. Now all of these are 1 frame long, and your sequence is 12 frames per second. So when you drag it onto the timeline now and let go, it will be there. It looks like it's not there, so don't freak out. It actually is there. But why you can't see it is that this bar down here is like, it's sort of, your timeline is zoomed way out to accommodate like hours of video. So what you need to do is zoom way in so you can see your frames, which are very short. So take this bar here, this little circle on the end, click it, and drag it to the left to zoom in on your timeline. And then this is your playhead here. That's where you are on your timeline. Drag it all the way to the left, and you will see your frames. And if you zoom in even more, each frame will be even bigger on the timeline. And here it's 6 frames, so it's 6. It says 6 here on the timeline because that's up to 6 frames. 0 seconds and 6 frames. And if I go through here, then my frames are moving at 12 frames per second. And if I hit play, it will show a preview. A handy tool to loop your playback for animation is to use these buttons here to set up your playback mode. So first I would use this to this one to mark your in and out, which is your beginning and ending. So I'm gonna put my timeline at the beginning and mark in, and I'm gonna put my playhead at the end and mark out. Actually, I'm gonna mark it out right there. So bring your playhead to right before the end frame and click mark out. Then when you play back, it will just go to the end. But it's not looping, right? And there's no button here automatically that will loop, but there is a button to loop playback, and it's hidden in a button window. So go to this plus sign, say button editor, and find the looping button, which is this one. Hit this one and drag it down here, and now your loop button will be here. So click OK, and then when you play, you're going to loop playback with this button. Now when you play, it will loop your animation. Great. So it's at 12 frames per second, it's looping. I like how it looks. And you can change your playback by dragging this around. An important thing to note is that you can always extend your frames, any of your frames, by clicking one and using this red arrow to drag it out. So now this frame is held for 3 frames. It's important to note that you can only drag out frames if there is space for it in the timeline. So because these are all squished together, I can't just drag this out. So I need to move this over first and then extend it. Okay. So I'll bring my mark out back to my little zone. Actually, I want to extend the ending frame, so I'm going to do that. Great, okay, so I'm happy with how this looks, and I'm going to export this video. We go to File, Export, Media. Oh, very important, save your project at all times. Okay, good, save. File, Export, Media, and this is how you will export your video. The best format to export it is H.264, which is kind of your standard thing. You can also export at these other sort of formats. You can play around with that if needed, but the standard one is H.264. And now we'll create an MP4. You need to change your file name and your location to save it. I'm just going to change this to scanning video test. Change the location. Is this good for me? Save. And play back here to make sure that it is exporting what you want. This is exporting with a black frame at the end, which I don't want. So I'm going to drag this ending of the mark out. Okay, it's still exporting. All right, and I'm going to export. Video was exported successfully, and now I'm going to watch that video back that I just exported to make sure it looks exactly how I'd like it to be. Scanning video test. All right, open that up and see if it plays what I like. Yep, that's what I was hoping for. So that's it. That's how you export your video and then you upload that. All right, great.